So when you say the fire speaks back, well, Varys says the fire speaks back when he's telling the story, which is then being retold, and it's 30 years later.
The text has convinced me that a young, handsome Barristan Selmy had a consequential relationship with Daenerys' purported mother, Rhaella Targaryen, and Bonifer Hasty is likely just the patsy. But also, I'm convinced that this is actually important and key to fully understanding George's whole story, from the Dance of the Dragons and Aegon IV through Dunk and Egg, and until Daenerys' story, including the Winds of Winter. Barristan has loved and served 3 generations of Targaryen women, Rhaella, then Ashara, and now Daynne-heiress. Importantly, these women possess the special Dragon X genetic code that allows for dragon bonding and, in special situations, dragon egg hatching. Selmy has the critical inside look at how the Targaryens basically got their groove back and how they brought dragons back into the world. From the Game of Thrones, the iconic line, "For the first time in hundreds of years, the night came alive with the music of dragons." Okay, time for the key text from Dance. It's a discussion between Dany and Selmy. As we read, keep in mind we're talking about something that happened over 40 years prior. "Tell me," Dany said, as the procession turned toward the Temple of the Graces, "if my father and my mother had been free to follow their own hearts, whom would they have wed?" "It was long ago, your grace. Your grace would not know them." "You know, though. Tell me." The old knight inclined his head. "The queen, your mother, was always mindful of her duty." He was handsome in his gold and silver armor, his white cloak streaming from his shoulders, but he sounded like a man in pain, as if every word were a stone he had to pass. As a girl, though, she was once smitten with a young knight from the Stormlands who wore her favor at the tourney and named her Queen of Love and Beauty. A brief thing. What happened to this knight? He put away his lance the day your mother wed your father. Afterward he became most pious, and he was heard to say that only the maiden could replace Queen Rhaella in his heart. His passion was impossible, of course. A landed knight is no fit consort for a princess of royal blood. The pain described in the text above is definitely not a pain a man feels for another man's loss. Is Selmy really remembering Hasty's terrible loss of a lover when she was forced into a prearranged marriage? Or is he actually thinking about his own loss? Also, the crazy specific details he remembers, are they really about another man 40 years ago? Put differently, is Selmy remembering that Hasty named Rhaella Queen of Love and Beauty, and that Hasty wore her favor, and that their relationship was, quote, a brief thing? No, Selmy is talking about himself. He wasn't even Kingsguard till after Rhaella married. He would not have the access to know how many months she had a lover unless it was him. I guess he could be Hasty's confidant in a massive treason, but this seems a stretch. And importantly, and as a lightning strike of confirmation, George interposes how handsome Dany thinks he is into the middle of this discussion to bring the reader's thoughts to him. And just think what any woman might have thought of Selmy in his prime. To reiterate this, just when they are talking about some supposed other great tourney knight, also with somewhat minor land holdings in the Stormlands, Selmy is showing kidney level stone pain. And at that very same moment, Dany thinks he is handsome. Come on, Bonifer Hasty is just a patsy. Or you can believe Rhaella loved the stork of a man Hasty over the already bold, handsome, and tourney champion and future war hero of Selmy. Okay, we do need to highlight the main problem with this idea. It's that Selmy and Dance basically describes Hasty in an exact same manner we have learned about Hasty earlier in Feast for Crows through Jaime's thoughts. Recall from before, Selmy says, "He put away his lance the day your mother wed your father. Afterward he became most pious, and was heard to say that only the maiden could replace Queen Rhaella in his heart." This compares to the following lines from Jaime 3 in Feast. "Sir Bonifer himself had been a promising knight in his youth, but something had happened to him, a defeat, or a disgrace, or a near brush with death, and afterward he had decided that jousting was an empty vanity and put away his lance for good and all." But reading the quote above, it could have been anything that made Hasty put away his lance. Maybe he killed a man. It doesn't matter though. Selmy is withholding the truth from Daynne, right? He's not telling the whole story of his pain related to Rhaella. So, in the same breath, we can't take him at his word when he seems to implicate Hasty, who's another landed knight from the Stormlands that is also good in the list. And we know Selmy is not above being deceitful when it serves his purposes. Think how he came to serve Daynne, how he got into Duskendale to rescue Aerys, and also that at least twice he jousted as a mystery knight. If you know any other places of his possible questionable honor, please share them in the comments below. You might ask, who cares? Well, our story is one where the key component, the dragon component, is likely linked to a special gene carried on the X chromosomes, where the big players in this seemingly totally patriarchal society are constantly searching for the right females, basically as broodmares, to pass this special X-linked gene to their sons. And the prophecies are often centered on this. Just think what Illyrio tells Viserys when presenting Daynne to Drogo for inspection. Look at her, that silver gold hair, those purple eyes. She's the blood of old Valyria, no doubt, no doubt. George's story is the history of the making of the dragon seeds, from both sides of the sheets, and the children of these seeds. And Selmy was there, and crazy intimate with three of our pivotal Valyrian women, Rhaella, Lilac, Ashara, and now Daenerys. Okay, the facts relating to Rhaella. Selmy was born 236, 237. Rhaella was born 245. Selmy was knighted by Rhaella's grandfather in 252 or 253. Rhaella marries Aerys in 258. Selmy joins the Kingsguard in 259, and Selmy kills Meleys in 260. So Selmy would have been at court and known to the court during Rhaella's youth. In fact, when there's openings on the Kingsguard following the tragedy at Summerhall, Hightower names him to the White Cloaks. Selmy then goes off to war, possibly for the second time during the second part of the Ninepenny Kings, and he kills Meleys. Okay, let's jump ahead to Selmy and Ashara. There are three main points Selmy thinks about Ashara. First, he loves her, and she was the one, if you know what I mean. Second, a plain reading of his thoughts seems to implicate Ashara as having a consensual sexual encounter with Brandon Stark. And third, that he genetically connects Daenerys to Ashara. First, the love quote. She died never knowing that Sir Barristan had loved her. How could she? He was a knight of the Kingsguard, sworn to celibacy. No good could have come from telling her his feelings. No good came from silence either. He would never know. But of all his failures, none haunted Barristan Selmy so much as that. Okay, the Stark quote. But Ashara's daughter had been stillborn, and his fair lady had thrown herself from a tower soon after, mad with grief for the child she had lost, and perhaps for the man who had dishonored her at Harrenhal as well. If I had unhorsed Rhaegar and crowned Ashara Queen of Love and Beauty, might she have looked to me instead of Stark? In the quote above, Ashara is possibly mad with grief for the man who dishonored her. So the affair was consensual and likely produced the child. Mad with grief. Think about it. That person is dead before she dies. So it can't be Ned. It has to be Brandon, if it is a Stark. Now, it is questionable if it is a Stark at all. But what do we know about Playboy Brandon? He thinks a bloody sword is a beautiful thing, according to Lady Dustin at least. So when Selmy is saying Ashara may have looked to him instead of Stark, it might not be for some retribution as many have proposed, but rather for love and lust and consensual intimacy. She truly wanted Brandon's sword. Here I want to give credit to Tony Teflon, who I will link in the description or a pinned comment. Many years ago, he put into my mind that Ashara would love the brazen wolf, not the shy wolf. Tony has been influential in how I look at A Song of Ice and Fire, and in the pinned comment below, I will also link to one of my early videos that is a theory battle between him and Sweet Robin PJ about who wrote the pink letter. Okay, the linking of Daenerys to Ashara genetically. Even after all these years, Sir Barristan could still recall Ashara's smile, the sound of her laughter. He had only to close his eyes to see her, her long dark hair tumbling about her shoulders, and those haunting purple eyes. Daenerys had the same eyes. Sometimes, when the queen looked at him, he felt as if he were looking at Ashara's daughter. Ashara is likely a Baratheon crossed with a Targaryen. Black hair, lilac eyes, like Rhaenys, the queen who never was. Want to know who Ashara's parents are? Check out my much more multi-fact oriented sister video to this one, Ashara's Parents Revealed, where we describe just how Rhaella could have tricked Ares. It has multiple quotes from the World Book as well as fire and blood. From the shoulders of giants.